Welcome to another episode of Living Faithfully, where we explore the depths of our faith and how it intersects with our daily lives. I'm your host, George, and joining me today is the insightful Victoria.
Thanks, George. I'm really excited about today's topic. We're diving into something that I think many of us encounter almost daily, the concept of the narrow gate and the wide path, as described in Matthew 7:13-14.
Absolutely. For those who might not be familiar with it, this scripture tells us, "Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it." It's a powerful contrast, isn't it?
It really is. So let's break this down a little bit, starting with the wide gate. This represents an easy and popular option, right? It's the one that doesn't require much change in our lives.
Exactly. The wide gate symbolizes the path that appeals to our comfort, our convenience, and often aligns with the majority opinion. It reminds me of an analogy. Imagine a beautiful, smooth highway. You can just cruise along without much effort, but where does that road lead? Unfortunately, it often leads us away from genuine fulfillment.
That's a great analogy, George. It's easy to drift along that broad road because it's paved with ease and convenience. Now contrast that with the narrow gate. What do you think this represents?
The narrow gate is more like a rugged, winding trail. It requires an intentional choice to walk through it. It might seem daunting at first, because it often means surrendering certain comforts and going against the crowd. Can you think of a time when you faced that choice?
Definitely. I remember a period in college when everyone was partying over the weekend. The narrow path for me was choosing to stay in and work on an important project. It meant sacrificing immediate fun for something that had long-term benefits. It felt lonely, but ultimately it was rewarding.
That's a perfect example, Victoria. The narrow path often challenges our selfish desires, demanding obedience to values that might not always be popular. It involves sacrifice, discipline, and at times even rejection from peers.
Right, and speaking of rejection, let's talk about the danger of the wide path. As alluring as it may seem, it leads to destruction. It's important to remember that comfort without truth is just a trap.
Absolutely. Many find themselves on this wide path simply because it's the default option when we follow our own way. It's what happens when we allow our society's norms to dictate our values, rather than anchoring ourselves in deeper truths.
That leads us to the promise of the narrow path. Although it requires effort and discipline, it leads to real, eternal, and abundant life. It's like the difference between junk food and a nourishing meal.
That's a great comparison. One gives immediate pleasure but can ultimately lead to health issues, while the other may not be as tantalizing in the moment but strengthens us in the long run. Plus, those who walk the narrow path can rely on God's Spirit for strength and guidance.
And the trials we face on this narrow road aren't there to destroy us, they refine us, like how gold is refined through fire. So, George, how can we encourage our listeners to reflect on this in their own lives?
Great question, Victoria. I think it's crucial for our listeners to reflect on a few questions. Firstly, consider, which path am I on right now? Narrow or wide? It's a fundamental question.
Definitely. And what about our daily choices? We can ask ourselves, what daily choices show that I'm pursuing life over comfort? Sometimes small daily decisions make all the difference.
And lastly, we might want to ponder, who am I following, the crowd or Christ? That can be a challenging but important introspection.
These reflections can lead us to a deeper understanding of where we're headed in our lives. It's often the quiet moments of contemplation that steer us back onto the right path.
So, as we wrap up today's discussion, we've explored the contrast between the wide and narrow gates, the challenges and promises of each path. Remember, choosing the narrow path takes courage and can feel lonely at times, but it leads to genuine life.
Yes, and let's not forget the importance of that internal compass. It's our guiding principle amidst societal pressures. Challenge yourself this week to reflect on which path you're on.
Thank you for joining us today on Living Faithfully. We hope this conversation has inspired you in your spiritual journey. Until next time.
Goodbye, everyone.